field, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
Hi, my fellow Americans. I know that I have traditionally started these videos with hi, my fellow Democrats, but given that Trump's administration has gone into full effect and there are a lot of executive orders being issued and a lot of campaign promises being followed through on, I feel that the country as a whole should be addressed and not just Democrats. You know, my initial reason for starting this was to help Democrats kind of see the light and why they lost the election and what to do to stop that from happening. And one of those executive orders is the sweeping of the migrants in this country. So one of the things that really sparked my interest when I was in college was a professor actually got me started on understanding how language in and of itself is a political force. And I know that most people don't think of it in those contexts, but it actually is. I think that South Africa is a really good example of this. Nelson Mandela, ending apartheid in South Africa, a large portion of that campaign came from the fact that English was viewed by South Africans as the language of the elite. It's also another subject that I have a well of knowledge on. But full transparency, as always, because y'all know that I'm like a sheet of glass with you guys. I am reading from some stuff that I jotted down simply because there is just too much information for me to kind of like spit out off the top of my head. Some of it I can, some of it I can't. There is quite a bit, and I don't want this to end up being such a lengthy video like the one I did previously on COVID was. So, on that note, we as a nation, as Americans, I kind of am amused when I do see people wearing t-shirts or something that say, welcome to America, now speak English. I don't know if they're aware of the fact that the United States actually does not have an official language. And if you were unaware of that, well, now you know. The more you know. So, on that note, our country was founded by colonists who were English, but I don't think at any point was it ever viewed that we would remain only English. And now if you look at the fabric of America, obviously that has held true. Most people are under the misconception that the other half or the general population who did vote for Trump are anti-immigration. And that's not the way that this is working. They're not anti-immigration. If you've watched my video previously on immigration, there is a significant difference between opportunity and opportunistic. And whereas people like my great-grandfather who came here from Italy worked really, really hard to assimilate into American culture. And what I mean by that, he didn't speak a lick of English when he came into this country. And till the day he died, he spoke what we refer to as a Taglish. But he tried really hard to learn the language of his adopted nation, because that is what you do. But that's not what's happening here. So in the opening clip of this, I had pulled up some stats from Google in regards to language translation costs. And if you didn't pause it or slow it down, basically because we don't have the 2024 numbers in yet, we're just happy February, by the way, happy Embolic to those who celebrate it. We don't have the numbers in really for 2024 just yet. So I pulled up for 2023, the most recent. And in 2023, the U.S. spent $9.02 billion on translation services. And it was the largest market in the world. It was 3 times the size of its second largest competitor, which was Germany. That's a lot of money. Now, when I first started becoming interested in this topic in circa 2016-ish, 2017-ish, I can tell you that that number has dropped. And one of the reasons that it's probably dropped is because we do have access now to things like AI, Google Translate, smartphones. So those are things that people are more and more commonly using as a way of communication. If you've watched, I forget the name of the documentary, but if you've watched Tulsi Gabbard's documentary on immigration, one of the way that she did communicate with migrants was through these apps. So this is becoming more and more frequently used. So as a nation, as I've said before, we are very, very young. In comparison, if you look at other nations, you look at, Western Europe, you look at Asia, these are nations that have been established for literally thousands of years, compared with America, who will be celebrating their 249th birthday this July. So we are still in our infancy. We are still experiencing growing pains. But in that short period of time, we have known everything from race riots to abortion protests to draft riots, labor violence, secession, anti-war protests, recessions, inflation, and a whiskey rebellion, several wars, But the one kind of trouble that we've actually never experienced is a language riot. And I know that that sounds comical and it sounds like something you would never really give a second thought to, but understand that the idea that language is a political force is something that could very well threaten to split a country apart. And even as alien as it is to us and to our cultural traditions, because America is such a melting pot, it is something that does need to be addressed. And this is part of why if we are going to be a united people and we are going to play nice in the sandbox with each other, then eventually down the road, we are going to need an official language, because there's more than just the factor of a financial cost. There's also quite a bit of a human cost to this issue. And if we're going to choose an official language, then it should be the language that our fundamental laws are written in, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence. So, given our current political climate, as well as the relationship between language and political powers, for those of you who have read 1984, you will be able to attest to the facts that Orwell contended that the use of audacious and nonsensical words, very similar to what we are seeing sensationalized in streaming services and lingo, like urban lingos, that we would begin to see people who are parrots. And what do I mean by parrots? I mean people who cannot form their own political opinions because they are parroting the thoughts of others. My mother is actually a very good case of this. She's a good clinical case to study because she has never formed a political opinion on her own. She has always relied upon the men she was married to. And that is parroting. She doesn't really look outside of what she's being told by her partner to understand the actual landscape that we live in. So Orwell, if you've read 1984, and if you haven't, I do strongly recommend it because we are actually living it. He explains, just to give you a little context, that a new language known as Newspeak, idealistic for such an environment, Newspeak was developed to limit independent thinking and shorten memories. And he summarizes this with, to think clearly is a necessary first step towards political regeneration. In embracing this ideal, the fictional party of 1984, a totalitarian government, was able to limit threats to their society to maintain the status quo. Orwell depicts a political nightmare where language is used to control the masses. And that's actually what's happening here. And a case in point is the serious, they're classified as guffaws, but looking at the way Biden was speaking and things like that. The way he was acting, his zoning out moments, even Mitch McConnell, but we were told that they were cheap fakes. This is my point, is like they tried to spin it, oh, they're cheap fakes. And the Democratic Party, in this particular instance, lied to the American people. And this is one lie that they did. They told us that we couldn't control the border without a bipartisan bill passing through Congress. There has been no such bill in the last going on 2 weeks since Trump was sworn in to the presidency, because there was no need for a bill. There was no need for a bill. And the fact that they waited on it until 2024, within the campaign cycle, they waited. And that bill, I know that it's been portrayed in the media as a poison, as the Republicans, like stonewalling and saying, no, we're not going to do this on the word that Donald Trump told them not to. But what really happened, if you actually read the bill, is that it was chock full of poison pills, what's called poison pills. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there were things to send additional financial aid to the Ukraine. Why are we talking about the Ukraine when we are talking about when this bill is supposed to be focused on America's borders and its peoples? And they were like, oh, well, the money wouldn't leave the country. It would go towards restock and resupply for things that we had given to the Ukraine. But that's not what you were told. See, I actually took the time to read the bill to understand. And you know what? It sucks because, I have a full-time job. I have a family that I take care of. I have myself to take care of. I don't necessarily have the time, but I make the time. And that's the difference, because I don't trust anything that they are telling us. In regards to the sweep that America is now conducting on migrants, I know a lot of people are really stressing about the birthright, the 14th Amendment, the birthright citizenship. So just to be clear, for those of you who cut civics class, the president is not a lawmaker. He cannot pass laws. He can sign executive orders until the fucking cows come home. It does not make it law. That bill there would have to be a bill to amend that amendment in the Constitution in order for that to not be recognized, which, let's just play devil's advocate and say that he does attempt to do that. That's a long ways down the road. It's a long way down the road. It's not something that you can just do with the sweep of a pen. That's not how the American laws or justice system is set up. That's not how we're structured. So I want you to understand, and I know that there are a lot of people who are like, well, they're going to go after the Native Americans. And I know several Native Americans who are kind of panicking. And I'm like, okay, yes, I understand why you are panicking. But you know what? No matter what arena it's in, CYA people, cover your ass. If you think you are at risk for being deported by accident, carry your papers. I know it sucks, and I don't agree with a lot of the things that he's pushing out about this. And I know that his administration has made it abundantly clear that they are not going to be targeting Indigenous Americans. But you know what? It's better to be safe than sorry. Because again, as much as there are a lot of things that Trump stood for that I do agree with, I also don't trust any politician as far as I can throw them. So the best defense is good offense, people. I mean, listen, it's like a rule of thumb for life. So if you think that there is a chance that you could possibly be mistaken as a migrant, then do yourselves a favor and please make sure that you have your papers on. Now, I'm sure you've all seen this video.
I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked. The children. They don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
What upsets me about this is that, and I'm sure you've heard this on a lot of other channels, but it's the fact that where were your tears for Laken Riley, Sarah Boot, any of these other people who were murdered by migrants? They don't deserve your sympathies. My newsfeed is full of people like off the wall about migrants being, I don't even want to say deported. They're being repatriated to their country of origin. And the whole thing with Colombia, people are like, oh, he's going to put tariffs on. He did a lot more than threaten to put tariffs on. He threatened to put sanctions. He threatened to delay visa processes. There was a whole slew of other things that he was like, okay, fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. And this is who Trump is. It does not mean you have to like it, but you have to accept it and you have to anticipate it. This is what I mean by a good defense is a good offense. But for those of you who are crying about the migrants, well, number one, why weren't you opening up your doors to them? Because if you really gave a shit, you would have found a way to incorporate yourself into their lives, okay? And open your doors and open your wallets and help them. And we opened our wallets, we just didn't know how much we were spending. I mean, the American people, the government knew, but we didn't. The other thing is then people forget that at the 11th hour, all of a sudden, Biden was reinstating a lot of the border control policies that Trump had had in his first term. And if you heard the bell, that was my kitchen timer. Because I am making dinner. This is what I mean. I don't exactly have a lot of time on my hands. So this is what I mean by comparing it to Orwell's 1984. Because on both sides of the fence, there has definitely been what would be considered newspeak. And I'm seeing it more and more frequently. And I also understand that we live in a world that we have 24/7 news. We have constant access to social media, constant access to the internet. We are given news at a neck-breaking speed. Constantly. We are constantly flooded with news. And so much happens. And I don't know if it's necessarily that it was never like this before, or if it was always like this, we're just more acutely aware of it because we do have access to the world through this little thing that I'm recording on our phones. So I'm not quite sure how it happened, but this is the reality that we live in now. So keeping up with the daily things that go on, it is a chore. It is. It's a lot of work. But I think that by understanding the fact that advocacy for the United States to adopt an official language, it's not a new idea. Benjamin Franklin suggested it back in 1753. Right before he died, actually, Theodore Roosevelt also implied that the, quote, melting pot of languages that we found in that are found in the United States. In a letter to the president of the American Defense Society, he wrote, "We should insist that if the immigrant comes here, does in good faith become an American and assimilates himself to us, he shall be treated on an exact equality with everyone else, for it is an outrage to discriminate against any such man because of creed or birthplace or origin. But this predicated upon a man's becoming, in very fact, an American and nothing but an American. If he tries to keep segregated with men of his own origin and separated from the rest of America, then he isn't doing his part as an American. There can be no divided allegiance here." And as to the reason why I feel that it hasn't been adopted by the United States yet, is because we have become too politically correct. And I've been saying this for a really long time. And yeah, it's my generation's fault. I completely take ownership of this. on behalf of Generation X, we are responsible for the political correctness that y'all are experiencing right now, and I'm sorry. So there's an apology, at least from one Gen Xer. It's not a matter of not respecting another person's origins. I saw a couple of TikToks that people were like, well, then you don't get to eat Mexican food, you don't get to do this. We're not Americans who want stronger border control. We are not saying you can't come here. Even Trump is not saying you can't come here. He is simply reinstating what he had back in his first administration, that if you declare asylum, it's wait in Mexico. If you are fleeing from Mexico, they take that into consideration. But for those who are coming from another country and they are waiting for asylum, because what was happening was they were coming and declaring asylum, being given a court date, and then being set loose into the interior of America. And that can't happen anymore. And the other problem is that it wasn't being vetted as to who actually needed asylum and who didn't, which causes a problem for those who actually do need asylum. So it becomes a very vicious cycle. And all the while, the American people are the ones footing the bill. I don't know about anyone else. I can tell you my healthcare coverage has doubled in the last 3 years. Part of the reason is because our publicly or federally funded healthcare insurance companies or healthcare institutions, hospitals, things like that, have become so overwhelmed with the amount of people that they had to treat or take on as free accounts. This became a problem because what they were doing is, okay, well, she pays, so let's double her insurance. Doesn't mean I can afford it, but that's what happened. And this is why I'm paying so much. And you don't want to know how much I'm paying for health insurance. You have no idea. So these are the kinds of things that, so many people view English because of England and America as a language of despotism. And it is very evident that the United States, for a very long time now, has been trying to assuage its guilt over oppression of numerous peoples, both inside and outside of the United States, in its relatively short history. But to think that language is not a political force and how much of a driving factor that can be into assimilation is foolhardy. To think that that's not a thing, it's foolhardy. And when I said that there is more than just the financial cost, there's also been incidences of immigrants dying on the job. There was one in particular that sticks out in my memory. I think it was in 1996, and it was in Orange County, and it was at a chemical plant. And this man died because even though there were signs clearly posted not to walk along the catwalk that was above the vats of chemicals, he didn't speak English, so he literally couldn't read the sign, and he died. He fell into a 175-degree vat of chemicals and died. So there's a human cost to this, guys. Like, this is not something that can be looked over or glossed over lightly. So on that note, I think I'll probably do another video on this because I don't want to keep it too long. I know I'm probably up to about maybe 22 minutes at this point. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I hope y'all have a great night, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.